All right, so welcome everyone to the first National Geographic Learning webinar of the season. We're very happy to be back, and our title today is Speak Clearly, Listen Carefully, and it is about productive and receptive pronunciation. So some of you might have been at our session last week with Marek, and this webinar kind of continues on from what Marek was talking about, but we're going to show you more sort of practical activities that you can use in the classroom. Let me introduce myself. So my name is Will Lashett. I'm an academic consultant and teacher trainer for National Geographic Learning. I'm from the UK, but I live in Singapore, and I have been working in ELT in Asia since 2001. I see lots of you using the chat box. Most of you are sending that to everyone. If you're not, if you're sending your messages to hosts and panelists, please click on the blue box above where you chat and then select everyone so that everyone can see your messages. And if you have a particular question, so use the chat to communicate with me and other people. And if you have a particular question you want me to answer, please do that in the Q&A box. So today I'll be showing you content from our new young adult or adult program, which is called Voices. And I'll be showing you examples of pronunciation activities from Voices today. So let's begin. So pronunciation. Pronunciation is the practical application of the language system phonology. So phonology is the linguistical term and pronunciation is the practical application of that. And we can, broadly speaking, we can divide the study of pronunciation into two areas which match the language skills of speaking and listening. So to be good at speaking English, and by good, I mean easily understood by most people, we need to have good productive pronunciation. And by productive pronunciation, it means being able to produce or say sounds, words, phrases, and sentences in a way that people can easily understand. So it means that you are intelligible. It's a word that Marek used last week. It includes things like, sorry, there's the definition there. People can easily understand what we say. It includes things like individual vowel and consonant sounds, consonant clusters or blends, but also things like pausing, intonation, word, sentence stress, and other aspects as well. I'm going to ask you a question. So I'm sure most of you use an English course book or textbook. And I want to ask you, in your opinion, in the textbooks that you've used, do you think they have too much productive pronunciation in them? Do you think they usually have just the right amount? Or do you think there is not enough productive pronunciation focus in the books that you use? So what do you think? Do you think they have too much, just the right amount, or not enough? Okay, so St. Bernard says just enough. Amir says not enough. Alini says enough, enough, enough. Okay, so most of you are saying enough, okay, or not enough. Okay, nobody says too much, right? Okay, so yeah, this is productive pronunciation. This is where most teachers and most course books, that's usually where they focus their attention. They focus their attention on producing sounds, and they usually do that by copying a model, which is either American or British English. So there's another half of pronunciation, which we're going to call receptive. And this means to understand what other people say. So to understand what other people say, we need to have good receptive pronunciation. So it's kind of like a listening skill. And let me ask you the same question. In your opinion, in the textbooks that you use, is there too much, just the right amount, or not enough receptive pronunciation, teaching students how to understand what other people are saying through pronunciation? What do we think? Not enough, not enough, not enough, not enough, just enough. Okay, so most of you here are saying not enough, and this is something that I definitely agree with. The course books, they tend to focus on productive, and they kind of not ignore completely, but yeah, there's not enough time given to receptive pronunciation. And of course, that is half of communication. So if we want to communicate with people, we need both of these in equal measure. So in my experience, yeah, this is definitely the case. There's not enough receptive. But when it is covered in books, receptive pronunciation in course books, it usually has the same model as the productive pronunciation, meaning that students listen to either British or American examples. It's a good point from Amir. He says there's enough listening exercises, but not enough actually focusing on the development of pronunciation, right? Okay, so this is Marek, and some of you may have joined his webinar last week. Can you just type in the chat box for me? Did you watch Marek's webinar last week? I'm interested if any of you here saw that. Eileen did, great. Okay, yes, quite a few of you did, right? So Marek is one of the authors of Voices, and he's a pronunciation expert. And we're going to watch a short clip from a video where Marek explains why we should aim for intelligibility and why this is so important when teaching pronunciation. Okay, so I'm just going to stop sharing for a moment, and I'm going to do a new share. Okay, let's go over to here. Okay, and we're going to watch a short clip here from Marek talking about why intelligibility is so important.
The first principle that I want to address is intelligibility. In other words, when teaching pronunciation in Voices, we focus on pronunciation that is comprehensible, clear, and easy to understand to a broad range of listeners. How do we know what makes up such pronunciation? There is plenty of research that shows which pronunciation features are important for intelligibility in international contexts, which pronunciation features aren't important, and which pronunciation features can actually make someone harder to understand. And research will be our second principle that we'll get to in a minute. You might say, surely pronunciation activities in all course books are focused on helping students to be easy to understand. Interestingly, though, this is not the case. For example, in 2021, I reviewed the pronunciation content of several major coursebook series. It turned out that in some teaching resources, 48% of all pronunciation slots were occupied by teaching students features of connected speech. However, research clearly shows that connected speech is likely to make you less intelligible, not more intelligible. So while teaching connected speech might be important to help students better understand fast speech, it's certainly not going to help them speak more clearly. And that's the distinction between receptive pronunciation and productive pronunciation. Receptive pronunciation is about helping students understand how people speak. Productive pronunciation, on the other hand, means helping students speak clearly. We also considered this when designing Voices syllabus.
Okay, and I'll pause the video there. Okay, now let me go back, okay, into my slide deck. And we will be able to continue here. Okay, so Marek's point here is that good pronunciation means being intelligible to other people. And to do that, we need to be comprehensible, clear, and easy to understand. And this does not mean sounding exactly like a native speaker, which counterintuitively can actually make people more difficult or harder to understand. So we need to focus on the areas where we know are most important for global intelligibility. So let's think about your students for a minute. So for them to be successful in a world which is becoming more and more interconnected, where we deal more and more with people from other countries, from overseas, I'm wondering if you could answer this question for me in the chat box. So think about your students. Which nationalities might your students have to deal with in their jobs in the future? So can you type a few nationalities into the chat box for me? Where do you think? So think about your country, think about which countries your country works with, does business with. What do you think might be common nationalities that young people have to deal with? So we've got here English, American, French. US, Europe countries, UK, China, Japanese, okay, Asian countries, East Asia, Chinese and Koreans, all Asian countries, Americans or Europeans. Right, okay, so we've got a huge variety here, and obviously this depends where you are. USA, Russia, US, USA, China, Indonesia, India, Southeast Asia. So it depends on the industry you work in, that they work in, and it depends on the country you're in. But we've got here a massive range of countries. And in fact, the majority of these countries, with the exception of America, in fact, America, I think, is the only one we've got written down there. That's the only country that speaks English as a native language, right, as a first language. So all of these other countries, if your students are working with them, they're going to be working with other non-native speakers of English. So that brings me to my next point. Who speaks English? So we know that there are around 2 billion English speakers globally. And we know that about 80% of these 2 billion actually speak English as a second, a third, a fourth, a fifth language, right? Which means that they are not native speakers of English. So this tells us something very important. This tells us that the majority, most of the conversations happening in English are happening between two non-native speakers, two people who have learned English as a second language, not between a native speaker and someone else. This information is from a British Council report, okay, called The English Effect. So what does that tell us? Well, it raises a question, doesn't it? So if we know this, if we know that most communication is between two people who speak English as a second language, the question is, why do we almost always use native speakers from the US or from the UK as the only models for speaking or pronunciation? So yes, native speakers speak English well, but there's plenty of evidence that native speakers, or maybe a better term, first language learners, are not good models for students. Here is an article from the BBC, which actually labels native speakers as the world's worst communicators. In this article, it tells us that second language learners speak much more purposefully, they speak more carefully, and this is typical of someone speaking a second or a third language. They're more conscious of who they're speaking to and whether they can understand them. Native speakers, in contrast, they often speak too fast, they use lots of jokes, lots of slang, they use lots of references, which are specific to their own culture. And they also have many features of pronunciation which are unclear to other people. So here is a quote from the same BBC article. It says, often you have a boardroom full of people from different countries communicating in English and all understanding each other very well. And then suddenly the American or the Brit, okay, someone from Britain walks into the room and nobody can understand them. This quote is from Chia Swan Chong. She is a communication skills and intercultural trainer, and she's also a Voices author. So in conclusion, what we should be doing in the classroom, we should introduce our students to a wide range of models, and we should focus on areas of language and pronunciation that really help students to be understood. Okay, so now I'm going to swap over to our classroom presentation tool. This is a digital media tool. It has all of the student book and workbook content on there. It's interactive. It's a great piece of software. I love using this either online or in the classroom. So let's have a look at pronunciation, how it's taught in Voices, and some activities that you can use in your lessons for both receptive and productive pronunciation. I'm just going to stop sharing for a moment, and we're going to go over to my classroom presentation tool. Let me share that. Okay, here we go. Right, so now we are looking at the CPT. So I'd say this is a digital version of the course book. So we're going to start off in Unit 7A. I'm lost without it. It's about things. This unit is about things. I can just show you the front spread there. And we're going to be zooming in here to the pronunciation activity. And the pronunciation activities are called clear voice. And this one, it says here, it's called saying consonants together. So the book we're looking at here is an A1 or elementary level course book. And you can see that the way they describe this here, it's in language which is easy to understand. So rather than saying consonant clusters, which is what these are, it says saying consonants together, nice and clear for the students. And it tells us here, when there are two or more consonant sounds together, it can be difficult to make all of the sounds. Try making the sounds by adding one consonant sound at a time. And we're going to look at that technique in a minute. Before we do that, maybe you can type into the chat box for me, why is this difficult for many speakers, many learners of English, particularly a lot of Asian languages? Asian learners have problems with this, adding multiple consonant clusters together. So in the chat box, why is this difficult for people? I think there are two main reasons. So let's see what you think. So when we have a consonant cluster in transport, which is what makes that different? Yes, we've got native language interference, says Claire. Yeah, Eileen, it's not a feature in L1. That's right. So often these combinations of sounds, they just do not exist in the student's first language, which makes it very difficult. There's another reason it's difficult, which is that actually it's making you work quite hard, right? It's a very short syllable, okay, very short transition between three different sounds. We've got the three different mouth shapes that we have to make very, very quickly together. So if you're not used to doing it, it's physically difficult to make this. Okay, so let's listen to the clear voice section and see how this is presented in the book.
Port, sport, transport,
port, sport, transport.
Great. Okay, so that is how it's presented. What did you notice about the way that that was presented there in the clear voice section? So how many times did you hear the target language there? Yeah, St. Bernard's has got it. Okay, we heard it twice, and there were two different accents. So the first one, could anyone notice what the first accent was? Yeah, so Ralph's got it. So the first one was a native, it was a British accent, and the second one was a non-native speaker, a second language learner. Someone says Lisa is saying it's Russian. Okay, Lisa's picked that out, okay, as a Russian speaker of English. So we've got two people, right? We've got the British model and we've got the non-native speaker model. So here, what we're doing here is we're trying to normalize that other people speak English, not just the British and the Americans, okay? Everybody speaks English, yeah? Yuri says speaking very slowly. Yes, it is slow, okay, because this is for level 1, okay, this is for elementary. And what they're doing here, they're using a technique where we're saying part of the word that's easy to say. We go from port, we get students to say port, then we add a sound, sport, and then we go to transport, okay? If your students have problems with this transition, it's quite good to give them a visual aid. So what we can do, we can say port, we can hold our hand up, port, and then we can hold our other hand up with the s, okay? And we can say something like, okay, sport, 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 sport. Okay, and we can move our hands closer together and put these two sounds together, okay? And sometimes having this visual aid helps our students to visualize and put this together. Okay, let's have a look at another activity here, the second one. And this, let me get my pen out here because I'm going to need to write something down. Okay, well, maybe first we'll listen. Okay, so here we're going to focus on another word, which is called text, okay, this word here. So before we start this word, actually, text, have a look at this. So we're talking about saying consonants together. If we look at the word text, we've got a consonant cluster there. Can you type into the chat box for me? What is the consonant cluster? What's the spelling of that consonant cluster? in the word text? Okay, right, yeah, so the spellings, we've got two consonants, we've got X and T, right? We can see that at the end, but a lot of you have already done it for me. In terms of the pronunciation, it's not two, it's actually three, isn't it? So we've got K, S, T, okay? K, S, T. So although it's two consonants in the spelling, we've got three in the pronunciation. It's really important to point that out to our students so that they understand that there is sometimes a difference between the spelling and the pronunciation. Okay, let's listen to the pronunciation here.
Tech. Tex. Text.
Okay, there we go. So we had this pronounced just one time this time, right? Now, this was done slightly different. What was the difference between the presentation of the first word and the second word? So I don't mean the number of speakers. I mean the way the word was introduced here. What's the difference? Can anyone notice? Right, he was adding one letter at a time. He was adding one letter at a time. For transport, we were also adding letters, but there was a difference. If we look at transport, okay, we were starting with the back, the end of the word, right? Port, sport, transport. So this method is called back chaining, where we start with the back of the word. And here what they're doing is they're doing it from the front. We're starting with the front. So we could call that front chaining, okay? So depending on the word you're teaching, sometimes it makes more sense to start from the back, and sometimes it makes more sense to start from the front, okay? Let's just write down, let's write this down here. So a lot of you already showed me this already. Okay, but when it was presented a little bit like this, right? I'm sorry, my writing is not the best with the digital pen. Okay, right. Okay, so what we've got here in my very bad handwriting, okay, this is how it was presented. And sometimes it's a good way to write this down so students can see it, to make it easier for them. So we've got tech, text, and text. And as Amir says there, sometimes the final T, it's often dropped, right? It's difficult to get students to add this sometimes because it's a sound that they will never have at the end of a word. So we show them it broken down like this. We can drill this, and visually when they can see it, this helps them to understand. Because sometimes if you're just saying the word text, they might not even hear that final T, right? Okay, so we want to make sure that they can definitely know. Or for example, the k sound, okay, it's not in the word, okay, so they need to see it there so that they know they should be at least aiming to try and pronounce it. Okay, right, so that's this activity here. Let's clear it. Okay, and we're going to move over onto the next activity here. So after they've done this, after they've had their awareness raised of back chaining and front chaining, okay, doing these consonants together, they then go and they do a speaking activity, which is about a smartphone. It's an infographic, a day in the life of a smartphone. And if we look in here, there's a word which is repeated all the way through here, which is the word smartphone. And the word smartphone has a couple of consonant clusters in it. So we've got sm there and we've got tf, okay, here. And we can see the word smartphone repeated lots of times. We can also see the target language from just now. There's the word transport. Okay, and we also see the word text. So the words that we've learned are being recycled in here so that students, students are practicing those words that they've learned. So let's go and have a look at the word smartphone. And I'm going to show you a bit more back chaining, a little bit more detail, okay? So this is how I like to present a word in class when I'm learning a new word that might be difficult to say. So we've got the word smartphone, something that's useful to do. Obviously, we can write that in phonemic script. Some students find that difficult. So another thing you can do, you can actually break it down so they can visually see how many sounds are in that word. Because when you say the word smartphone, it's just some sounds, okay? So they need to know how many sounds there are. Now with backchain, what we do, the idea here is that we're kind of distracting them from the whole word so they can concentrate on the sounds more easily. So we start off at the beginning here, and you can do this with me. I want you to repeat after me, okay? So this is how I'd present it in class. So we start off, we're going to say own. And you repeat own. So it's not one, okay, because we're doing pronunciation. So this is own, and that is two. The two here means there are two sounds there. O, n, okay, own. Next, we're going to say phone. 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 Okay, now here we might need to practice a few more times. Phone. Phone. And again, we can separate phone. Phone. Next, we've got art phone. Art phone. Mart phone. Mart phone. Smartphone. Smartphone. Okay, so we're going to go all the way through like that. And I found this to be a very, very effective method for getting students to recognize that we're building, aren't we? We're building from a foundation. So just like anything else, we're building it up from the ground, okay, from the bottom up. It works very well. Another way you can do it, I showed you with my hands earlier. Sometimes students like to see this visually like this. So we can do the same thing. If they're having problems with particular parts of the word, we can say smart. Smart, 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 and we can gradually make it faster and put it together. And they can do this with pairs, okay, in pairs. And we can do this again with parts of the word. Smart phone, smart phone, smartphone, smartphone, smartphone. So here's a couple of ways. What I'm trying to do here, I'm trying to, as well as sound, we're trying to visualize. So basically what I'm showing you with my hands, with this, okay, with the breaking down the word, with the number of number of sounds, with the back chaining here, we're trying to get them to visualize the sounds, okay? And this helps with a lot of students to actually pronounce them better. Great. Okay, so let's go and have a look at something else now. So this is the classroom presentation tool. I want to show you in here. So what I'm going to show you now is an exercise from our learning management system. This is called Online Practice, and Voices has basically it's a homework, a homework solution where we have lots of activities which match to the ones in the book, and the teacher can assign these to the students for homework, and then the students do them at home. Then they're automatically graded. The teacher can see how well the student's doing. So let's have a quick look at this one, pronunciation activity A. So again, this is homework that we would send, and it's about consonant clusters. So I'm going to play it. I want you to listen, and I want you to tell me what the word is.
Drink. Drink. Drink.
Great. So whereas before we were looking at productive pronunciation, what we're doing now, what are we doing now? We're focusing on, for homework, they're focusing on their, not productive, but receptive. That's right. So here we're focusing on receptive pronunciation. Let's try another one.
Spend. Spend. Spend.
Great. And what's good about this is that rather than doing this in class where the teacher does it maybe a couple of times and someone shouts out the answer, the student can do this at home. They can listen as many times as they want until they get it. They can listen and repeat, listen and repeat. They could record themselves saying it, compare the two. So it's a simple activity, but they can go into a lot of depth and spend as much time as they want. Let's try another one.
Black. Black. Black.
Great. And here we've got black. So we're going through listening to these consonant clusters. Okay, once we finish them all, okay, we can go over here. What the student would do is submit. Okay, and I've only done 3. So this is what the teacher would see. They would see that I got 3 correct and I had 2 mistakes. Okay, actually the teacher would see that I didn't attempt these 2. Okay, after I finished, I can actually click that button and it will show me the answer. So if I can't do it, okay, I can click the button, I can see the answers myself. So this is what the teacher would send for homework. Okay, let's go back into the CPT, the classroom presentation tool, and we're going to go into the next lesson. So this is the A lesson, we had pronunciation. Let's go into the B lesson, and we've got another pronunciation point in here. This lesson is called It Was My Grandmother's. So first of all, before we look at the pronunciation, have a quick look at the grammar. So the grammar that we're doing here, the grammar in this lesson, is about possession. So we're looking at possessive adjectives, possessive pronouns, okay? So we can see that presented here, okay? So now let's go and have a look at the pronunciation activity. And the pronunciation activity is looking at the pronunciation of s and z, s, z. Now, can anyone type into the chat box for me, what is the link between the pronunciation and the grammar? Can anyone see why this is a relevant pronunciation point? Right, exactly, because possessive adjectives and possessive pronouns have a lot of s and z sounds, right? Because they're using s's. So we can see here that the pronunciation is not, it's an integral part of the lesson. Okay, so it's something that has been planned very closely from the beginning, that it ties in to the whole lesson. It's not, as Marek said last week, it's not an afterthought, it's not a garnish. Okay, it's something that is, you know, a main part of the lesson that fits logically. So it fits in with the grammar. So here, yeah, we're talking about differentiation, right? Differentiation between two similar consonants, differentiation when we pronounce them and differentiation when we listen. This final S, as I'm sure you know, it's often dropped, just like the final T that was mentioned earlier. It's often dropped by learners of English. Okay, so let's read the box. Okay, it says here, when you say S, there is no voice from your throat and air comes out of your mouth. Okay, nice and easy to understand, right? Next one, when you say Z, there is voice from the throat, but no air comes from your mouth. So it's very clear to the student, okay, it's on the page, this is how you say it. So let's practice saying that. There are two things here, voice. So the first thing we want to do, okay, is we want to put our fingers onto our throats here. Yeah, voice and voiceless. So what it means by no voice is it means that there are no vibrations from your voice box. So I want you at home now, wherever you are, to put your hand on your throat here, and I want you to say the sound S. And when you say that, you should feel that there is no vibration in your throat. And if there is a vibration, it means you're not saying the sound quite right. So try that for me. Okay, next, we've got the Z sound, okay? Z, z, z. Okay, and when we say that, Z, you can do that again for me, we can feel that there is vibration in the throat, okay? So that's the first thing we can get students to do. Second thing, it talks about air coming out of your mouth. So what we're going to do this time, we're going to put our other hand just a few centimeters in front of your mouth, okay? And we're going to say S, S, S. Now, actually, for me, I need to put it a little bit below my mouth, because I'm pushing the air downwards out of my mouth. So when I do that, I can feel there's quite strong air onto my hand. Now I'm going to say the Z sound. Z, 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 Z. Okay, now I can feel a tiny bit of air, but it's much, much less, okay, than I can feel from the S sound. So again, just like earlier, I was showing you the visual representations. Here, we're using another sense, we're using touch, okay? And so the difficulty with pronunciation is that students cannot, when they listen, they cannot hear the difference, right? So we're thinking of another way to do it. So this time we're using touch to illustrate the difference in the sounds. And it's interesting with S and Z, because actually the mouth position, S, Z, S, Z, you can do it yourself. The mouth position and the tongue position are basically the same, right? The difference is in the voice and the air that you push out of your mouth. So these are two really nice ways to show your students, to help them understand the difference. Okay, let's listen to the way that this is presented.
S. Parents. Z. Yours.
S. Parents. Z. Yours.
Okay, so again, in that presentation, we had two different accents. Can anyone spot what those accents were? Would anyone like to guess? So the first accent we heard, the native speaker. Did anyone pick that out? So the first one, first one was the native speaker, and we're using the British English version, so that was British English. The second one, I think M. Sasaki is right. I think that was a French speaker. Okay, so the second one was a French speaker. What I also like here is we've got one man and one woman, right? So we've got male, female. Okay, we've got different accents, and as you go through the program, you'll hear accents from all around the world, okay, from all different places. So your students are being exposed to all of these different ways of speaking English. Okay, so far, okay, this has been mostly about productive pronunciation again. Now we're going to swap to receptive. Okay, so we're going to do the activity here. Okay, 7.4. Okay, we're going to say it. Okay, we can say the words and tick. Okay, then we're going to listen. Okay, and we're going to try and differentiate between the two sounds, see which one we can hear. Okay, so let's listen and find out which one it should be.
1. Theirs.
Okay, so we can listen to that again.
1. Theirs.
Okay, so in the chat box for me, can you type down, is that a S or a Z sound? Theirs, theirs, theirs. So to help you, okay, put your hand on your throat. Theirs, 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 theirs. Okay, and we can see, although most of you are putting Z, but at the beginning, okay, a few of you I think put S as well. And yeah, we're going to tick over here. That would be the Z sound, all right? Now we can actually do this. I should show you. Let's go in to the activity, make it a little bit more interactive. Let's play here.
1. Theirs.
And I can choose the correct answer.
2. Yours. 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 Yours.
Okay, what do we think for the second one? Yours. Yours. Again, use your hands. Yours. 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 Okay, and most of you are putting Z. Okay, let me ask you a question. If you're using both your hands, for you, which is easier to feel? Is it easier to feel the voice, or is it easier to feel the air, or not air in this case? So which do you find easier? Which is a better differentiator for you? So say the word yours, 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 yours. Which is a better differentiator? Okay, so it's interesting. We've got a mix here. So some of you are saying air and some of you are saying voice. I think for me, I find the voice a clearer distinction, because like I said, when I'm saying that yours, I am feeling, I mean, when you speak, I think, you know, there's always a tiny bit of air that comes out. So I am feeling some air. So that can be confusing for your students. You have to explain that it's how much air, right? There's a lot more air when it's a voiced, when it's unvoiced. Yeah. Okay, let's try another one.
3. Aunts. 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 Aunts.
Okay, let's see. So a lot of you, in fact, everyone here is putting S, okay, S, aunts, 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 right? And that's very clear, isn't it? When I'm saying that, aunts, there's definitely no voice there, okay? Apart from right at the beginning of the word, the R, there's a voice, R, aunts. But at the end, I really can't feel that. So I think, you know, it should be, hopefully, for most of your students, they should be it should be very clear, okay, by using their hands, the difference between these sounds. So it's very, very useful. Something else that you could teach your students, you could teach them that there's a kind of general rule here. To know which sound we're picking on the end, if it's voiced or unvoiced, you actually look at the previous sound. So if we look at the word there, so the last sound there, although the spelling is with an R, we don't pronounce that R, okay? So the last sound is there, air, air. Again, air is a diphthong, air, and air is a voiced sound. All vowels are voiced, air. So if the last sound in the word is voiced, it means that the S, okay, the S sound is going to be voiced as well. And if we look at a word like aunt, okay, the last sound there is a t, t, t sound. T, 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 t is unvoiced. So if it's unvoiced, we're going to add the unvoiced S sound. So we put voiced with voiced, unvoiced with unvoiced. Okay, so this is for a rule for the S on the end of a word. Okay, so voiced goes with voiced, unvoiced goes with unvoiced. Okay, so that's a useful piece of information for your students. Okay, so again, we're not going to do all of these, but again, I can either go through and show you the answers by clicking show next, okay, or I can just click the button to see if we got them right or not. Okay, let's go back. What's the time? Okay, 10:40. Okay, let's go back into the. We're going to have a look very quickly. We're going to have a look at one more pronunciation point, which I mentioned earlier. And this one, let's see, what page was it on? This is 8C, page 101. Okay, so let me type that in here. We're going to move forwards. And I want to have a look at a receptive pronunciation activity. So here in this lesson, when did you start drawing? You can see here that the grammar point we're looking at is the past simple, okay, negatives and questions. So when we're talking about the past simple making questions, our pronunciation point here for receptive is understanding connected speech. Now, this is something that Marek mentioned earlier, that connected speech is something that is very often focused on too much, okay, and it's not something that's very useful for our students. I think when I was a student, when I was a teacher, I was guilty of this as well, that because it was in the book, I spent a lot of time trying to get my students to say very fast, very connected sentences. And although my students enjoyed it and they thought it was funny, and we had a good time doing it, it's not really very useful. So let's have a look at this as an example, okay? So let's read it. When some people speak quickly, the sounds of some words change and become connected to the words around them. For example, did you often changes to did you, did you. And I think we can agree that did you is a very, very common piece of connected speech used by not only native speakers, okay? This non-native speakers would use this as well. Okay, so let's listen.
Did you watch a lot of television?
Did you watch a lot of television?
Okay, so the same thing in the way it's presented. We've got two different accents and we've got a man and a woman. And if you notice when they presented that, it was very careful. So they connected the first part, did you, but they didn't connect any of the rest of this sentence, right? And that is where I used to go too far as a teacher. I would have been teaching them something like, did you watch a lot of telly? Did you watch a lot of telly? Did you watch a lot of telly? And I would be getting my students to copy that, to mimic it. And that is where we're running into trouble, because most people wouldn't understand, did you watch a lot of telly? Even if sometimes British people speak like that. So we're focusing on the high frequency connected speech. We're not getting them to say it, actually, we're just getting them to listen so that they can understand it. Okay, I can go in here and I can have a look. So again, this is for homework. Okay, let's have a look what I can set my students for homework here through the learning management system. So I'm going to go back into the different units. So this is what the students and the teacher can see, and the teacher can assign just one activity, or they can assign as many activities as they want. So this is 8C. Okay, and I think this is a really good activity. It says choose all the questions with did you. Okay, so let's listen. Remember, this is for level 1. Okay, this is for A1 students. Let's listen. I want you to tell me, does the question you hear include the words did you? Okay, so let's listen.
What do you do after school? What do you do after school? What do you do after school?
Okay, now, did you hear did you in that? No, no. Okay, so we don't tick that one. Next one. Number 2.
Where did you grow up? Where did you grow up? Where did you grow up?
Okay, you're saying yes. Some of you are saying no. We're going to tick that one. Most of you are saying yes. Let's hear the next one.
Do you know each other from school? Do you know each other from school? Do you know each other from school?
Okay, most of you putting no. So why is it no? What are you hearing there? Right, it's do you, right? So we've got do you or did you? Do you, did you, do you, did you? So we didn't hear it there. Let's try one more.
Do you like your art teacher? Do you like your art
So
teacher?
again, this is do you, right? Okay, let's try one more because we've only had one so far.
Did you play outdoors a lot? Did you play outdoors a lot?
Okay, and that one is did you, right? Did you play outdoors a lot? It's worth noting that every time you do this activity, the sentences are in a different order. So the student could come back and do this again. They wouldn't be able to memorize the order, right? So they can practice this as many times as they want. And I think this is really good practice for students because they can do it on their own. There's nothing written down, so they can't use that as a crutch. And they're differentiating essentially between present tense and past tense by listening for particular sounds. Did you? And it's training them that when we listen to people, these are the clues that we should be listening to, which help with intelligibility, help with comprehensibility, right? That is how we distinguish between verb tenses. There's a very small difference between do and did you, okay, in fast speech. So it's really explicit practice on listening for a particular sound, and that is the kind of activity that helps students to improve their receptive pronunciation. Okay, this very detailed focus. I think this is a great activity. All right, okay, we're going to go back into, let me stop sharing for a moment. I'm going to show you a couple more things before the end. So let me go back into my PowerPoint, share that, and move this box out of the way. Okay, so I'm going to show you, apart from what I've shown you in the student book, okay, on the classroom presentation tool and in the online practice for homework, teacher also has a lot of resources like on these worksheets. And this is something I really like about Voices. It has lots and lots of extra photocopyable worksheets. There are grammar, vocabulary, communication, mediation, and even for pronunciation. So this is a game, okay, which practices receptive pronunciation for consonant clusters, which we looked at earlier. Here are the instructions for the teacher. So what the worksheet basically is, it has 4 of these shopping lists, and they have names on them. So we've got Prue's shopping list. This practices Pr. We've got Drake's shopping list, which practices Dr. Okay, Tracy's and Frank's shopping list. You put students into groups, and you give each group, you cut these up and you give each group one of these shopping lists. Then what happens is the teacher or a student, they're going to read out items, and the students have to listen. And if the item contains the same consonant cluster, combination of consonants, they're going to write that on their shopping list. But if it doesn't, they don't write anything. So again, they're focusing on a specific element of receptive pronunciation. Okay, so if you're Prue's shopping list, you can only write items that have the pr sound. Okay, so let's try it. I'm going to read out a few items from my shopping list, and I want you to tell me where can I write it. Okay, so the first item is Christmas tree. A Christmas tree. A Christmas tree. Okay, so who can write that down here? Tracy? Okay, why can Tracy write it? Because it is a Christmas tree. Right, there we go. Okay, Christmas tree. Great. Okay, let's try another one. Okay, next one is drawing paper. Drawing paper. Who can write that? Drake? Okay, let's check. Yeah, it's drawing paper with the dr sound. Okay, let's try another one. Frozen pizza. Frozen pizza. That is Frank. Okay, good job. Let's try another one. Photo frame. Photo frame. Photo frame. Okay, right. Oh, a couple of you made a mistake there. Yeah, this one is also Frank. I know you put Prue because it was the only one that didn't have one, right? Again, one more. Okay, let's try one more. Hairspray. 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 Spray. Right. So that time it's in the middle. So we've got a mix, haven't we? We've got the sounds at the beginning, we've got the sounds in the middle. Okay. And I think this is a really fun activity. What do you think? Do you think your students would? Do you think your students would like this kind of activity? It's great, isn't it? Yeah, I think it's something that's really fun. So I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm now going to, in your chat box now, okay, I've just sent you this activity. So in the chat box, okay, and here are the teacher's notes. There we go. So you can download that activity and you can use that. You can use that in your lesson. There we go. It's a little present for you. Someone says they don't get my pronunciation for hairspray. Hairspray. It's not hairspray. 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 Okay, good. Let's have a look at another one. Okay, another activity. So this is an activity. It's I'm going to call it pronunciation river. So students have to cross the river by identifying the correct pronunciation of the final S consonant. So we've just looked at this earlier as well, right? Let's make it a bit bigger so you can see. So we've got lots of words which end in S, and we've got 3 different pronunciations. So we've got the S pronunciation, the IS pronunciation, which we didn't look at actually, and we've got the Z pronunciation. I just sent it. I sent it in the chat box. So if you scroll up in the chat box, both the files are there. If you're looking for that previous file. Okay, so let's have a look. I'll put it in again in a minute. Okay, let's just have a look at this first. So what we're going to do, yeah, we're going to start off with this word books. Okay, so if we look at the word books, we need to start with that. We need to get across the river. So books, that final S, what is the pronunciation? Is it number 1, S? Is it number 2, is? Or is it number 3, Z? What do we think? Books. Okay, so it's the first sound, right? It's this first S sound. So that means that every other word we get to has to have this same pronunciation at the end. Okay, so that's what we're looking for. So let me get my annotation tool out so I can draw, and let's try this together. So what's the next word? So we're looking for a word that ends in S. So we've got here, we can go down, we can go across, or we can go diagonally. So is it watches, coins, or mats? So say the words to yourself, watches. And when you do this with your students, make sure that they're saying the words. Say that each word 3 times. Watches, 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 books. No, that's different. Coins, coins, books. No, that's different. Must be this one. Mats, mats, books. Right. Okay. And model this for your students so that they know how to do it. Because we don't want them just to go like this. Okay. We want them to be saying the words, right? Books, mats. That sounds right. After mats, where are we going next? We've got phones, ropes, noses. Okay, people are putting in ropes here. So we could go there. We could go down here. Could we go there? Things. No, we couldn't. Mats, that's a Z, isn't it? Okay, so we can go to ropes. Okay, how about from ropes? We've got keys, boxes, wallets, noses. Okay, make sure you're saying these. Okay, wallets. So we're going to go down to wallets. Okay, from wallets, where are we going to go? We've got phones, devices, mats, gadgets. Okay, we could go to mats. We could go to gadgets. We could go to books. Right, you're right. We could go to any of these three, couldn't we? So students can go whichever way they want. Let's go the fastest way. Let's go to mats. Okay, what happens after mats? We've got books, houses, addresses. Right, so we're going to go back up to books. Okay, from books, where are we going to go? We've got presents, words, devices. Okay, we go up to presents, and finally we go to books. Okay, so they've done the journey here. Now, the reason there are words repeated, these are all words that they've already studied, okay, in the book, all right? So these are all words that they already know, okay? So it makes it easier for them. Once we've done that one, we move on to watches and we do the same thing. We could use a different color and we could go across. So again, I think this is really fun activity, really good for actually here they're saying it, okay, and they're using their fingers like this. So we're practicing productive pronunciation. I'm going to put this in the chat box for you as well. Here it comes. Okay, there's the worksheet. It's in the chat box now. I think maybe if you're on a mobile phone, maybe you can't see it, but we will send it. We can send it to you in our follow-up email anyway. And I'm going to send the teacher's notes as well, so you know how to use it. There we go. Okay, so there are the teacher's notes as well. Okay, I'm not sure if that last one did send. Okay, there. Let's try that one again. Yeah, okay, there we go. Sent successfully. So they're there. Okay. If you can't see them, okay, it might be because you're on a phone or something else, or I don't know what the problem is, but definitely they're sent there. Lots of you are getting them. So that's great. Okay, now let me move on so we can wrap up. Okay, so let's wrap up by reminding you, okay, that all of the content and the materials that you've seen today are from National Geographic Learning's new adult program. It's a four skill integrated skill program. And one of its strengths, as we saw today, is a very strong focus on productive and receptive pronunciation. It has a different approach to pronunciation. It's very integrated, as I tried to show you today, and it's based on research. So everything you see in there, we know is what the students really need. If you're also interested in things like mediation, communication, personalization, learning about yourself, learning about other people, the everyday lives of National Geographic explorers, this is a great title that's really worth checking out. If you want us to send you more information, you can get in touch with us, okay, and we can send you some more information. We will send you a follow-up email, which will get to you by the end of tomorrow, before you go to bed tomorrow. This will contain links to the video recording and the certificate, and I think we can also add those two worksheets in for you, just in case you didn't get them in the chat box. Please check your junk mail folder, because sometimes it gets filtered in there. And I'm just going to repeat that you will receive this by the end of tomorrow, okay, by the end of tomorrow. It does take us time to get everything ready, so please be a little patient. Yeah, so this is for everyone who's with us in Zoom. We do have some upcoming webinars. So on September the 28th, we have a webinar with Christine Sherman. This is called Fostering Self-Awareness in the Language Learning Classroom. Can somebody please drop the link to register? Kitty's done it. Thank you, Kitty. Actually, Kitty, I'm not sure that's the right. Yeah, that's okay. That what you dropped in there is the National Geographic site, but not the webinar site. Okay, so yeah, we go. There's the webinar site there that Andrew just dropped in, webinars.eltngl.com. So we've got this one coming up on the 28th. It's going to be a great session, okay, talking about self-awareness, really important. And we have another session coming up on September 29th with Alex Warren, and he's going to be talking about visible thinking routines in the English language classroom. So he's going to be sharing some really great kind of activities, well, routines, okay, yeah, routines, kind of like activities which are really, really useful, okay, and you can be used in whichever age group you're using, really. So make sure you sign up to one or both of these, and you're going to come away with something really useful. Julie's just put that in as well. Before we leave, okay, please follow us on Facebook, or you can also find us on WeChat. You can also find us on YouTube. So we are at Facebook, eltngl.com, Facebook. And yeah, follow us, join our huge group of teachers, and you will find out all the events that we've got coming up, all the teaching tips that we're sending out, please follow us for our latest information. Final thing I want to see, if you're interested in some professional development, we have a new ebook out, okay, or physical book. And you can find out about this at eltngl.com, Breaking Through the Screen. And this is a professional development book, which is really teaching you how to get the most out of teaching online or using technology in the classroom. So it covers both, whether you're teaching hybrid, whether you're teaching completely online, or whether you're in the classroom using technology. This book is going to help you with your lessons to teach you not just to use technology for the sake of it, to really use technology so that it's worthwhile, so that you're helping your students to improve learning outcomes. Okay, I'm not sure what the time is. I think we're basically exactly at the top of the hour. Yeah, we are. I don't know if there are any questions here. I'll have a quick look. Any software or apps that we can use to practice our pronunciation? I mean, yes, there are lots of different apps out there. Let me just show you one website that I actually was going to show you. Thanks for the reminder, I didn't show you. I'm going to share one website. I'll put it in the chat box for you. Oh, it's not working for some reason. Let me try that again. So I actually prepared an activity which I didn't use in the end. I don't know why this isn't working. Okay, that's not working. What I'll do instead is I'll show you the website. So let me share one more time. Go to your screen, share. All right, so this one, I was going to share this website with you. So this is English Club Pronunciation. And this is a website that I like, and this is for minimal pairs. So where we were looking earlier about trying to distinguish between s and z, okay, what I found here, English Club Pronunciation minimal pairs, and they've got lots of different ones as well. They've actually got lists of words differentiated by level. So one for elementary, one for pre-intermediate, one for intermediate. You can listen to the words, and basically we've got minimal pairs. So these words are exactly the same, but they've got one sound different. And in this case, the sound that is different is the target sounds we were looking at, the s and the z. Okay, so students, you can actually make this into an activity where you can put these on the board, you can get students to say them, and the other partner has to listen and choose which word they're saying. Okay, are they saying close or are they saying close? And what I like about this is it's differentiated by level. So if you're doing upper intermediate students, you've got more difficult words. You've got advanced students, you've got much more difficult words here. So there we go. That's one resource you can use. Okay. We got a question here. The challenge in pronunciation is we're still wearing masks here. Yeah, St. Bernard English. I can understand that would be that would be very difficult. If they can't see your mouth, it's going to be a bit of a problem, isn't it? I mean, one thing you could do maybe is you could record yourself. You could make a recording of you and put that on the screen. So before the lesson, okay, record yourself without your mask, put it on the screen. But yeah, definitely, we're going to have students who for 2 or 3 years haven't been able to see their teacher's mouth, right? If or however long. So that's definitely an issue. It's an interesting point. Okay, right. Any other questions? Okay, I can't see any other questions there. All right, so I'm going to wrap up the session. I hope you've enjoyed the session. I hope you found that useful. And it's great to have so many of you here. We had about 200 people, which is great. Really happy to be back for our first webinar. Please sign up for those other ones. We gave you the link earlier, and we're looking forward to seeing you in our next National Geographic Learning Professional Development webinar. So have a great day, everybody, and we will see you next time. Okay, goodbye.